Welcome back to the Reframe Podcast. I'm your host, Josh Smith. I'm here again with the great Dave Baldwin of Furnace Hill. Where are you looking? You're right there. Furnace Hills Coffee.
Yes, sir.
All right. If you didn't catch episode 1, go back and grab it. There's a lot of good stuff there. We're talking about the shift from your classic ministry, and you still do pastoral work, right?
Well, I'll still marry and bury people and stuff like that. I'm an elder in our church. It's like, so.
Marry and bury. That's a good racket.
Yeah,
I like that.
Yeah, it's, but yeah, no, I'm still an elder in our church.
Okay.
And,
so you're connected to the traditional arm of ministry. You're doing something different, ministry, literally through coffee, as well as a business. It's all one and the same. So I really encourage everyone to go check out, is it furnacehillscoffee.com?
Yes, sir.
Okay,
yep.
Check that out. And you've been kind enough to offer Reframe Podcast listeners and Perry Hall Family Worship Center attendees an offer code for, what do we get?
Family worship, just put that in the coupon code and you get 20% off your order.
Perfect.
The whole thing.
And you want to do that? I mean, it's the coffee that we're drinking here, but you're in, how many churches are you already in now, your coffee?
We're in 15 churches.
Okay.
Everywhere from around the corner from our roastery to Salt Lake City.
But the difference is, so like the light switch moment for us here at Perry Hall was, we're going to buy and drink coffee, period. That's going to happen. That's our culture. That's, people want that. So we can just go buy random coffee from Weiss or from whatever grocery store, or we can partner with you and actually literally help fund ministries.
Sure.
And now you talked last episode about a home in the Ukraine.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
So
this coffee that you guys are drinking isn't connected to that, but
how dare you? I'm just kidding.
Our history has been that a ministry to a orphanage, a boys' orphanage in Ukraine.
Yeah.
It's based in Indiana, and it's just a really top drawer organization. It's called Mission to Ukraine. So you can, and there are a couple of Mission to Ukraine, so you have to look at the one that's based in Indiana.
Yeah.
But see what they're doing, not only in that boys' orphanage, but some other things in that region of Ukraine.
Right.
It's very remarkable. So we've been a part of helping them do some things in Ukraine, and so that's been good. The other thing that we do now, this is more moving away from faith-based ministry, but make it so there are 400,000 people in the United States that have Down syndrome. Our chief coffee roaster, has Down syndrome. Yep, she has Down syndrome. Aaron. We have another young man that works with us that has Down syndrome, and he's 17 years old. He's bilingual, very smart, and is a jokester. So he's a great place for a coffee roastery. But 400,000 people in the U.S. with Down syndrome. And there's several Down syndrome organizations. We are connected with the National Down Syndrome Society, and they have a fundraising arm called Buddy Walks. So there's a Buddy Walk in Baltimore, there's one in New York, there's one in Frederick, Maryland, there's one in Indianapolis, Indiana. About 230 Buddy Walks across the U.S. So we have a Buddy Walk coffee that we sell, and a portion of that goes to either the local Buddy Walk where the coffee was sold, or depending upon what time of year it is, it'll go all to that local organization and nothing to the national. October is Down Syndrome Awareness Month.
Okay.
March 21st. So here's an interesting thing. So March 21st is World Down Syndrome Day.
Okay.
Now you know why it's World Down Syndrome Day.
No.
Come on, Josh. You gotta think about this
man.
now. So you don't know what causes people to have Down syndrome then.
I do not.
Okay, so there's what gives people Down syndrome is that there's an extra chromosome. There's a third chromosome.
Okay.
On the 21st pair of chromosomes, 321.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So 321, World Down Syndrome Day around the world. So for March and October, somebody buys Buddy Walk, it goes straight to that local organization. Any other time of the year, it's split half and half between the national and the
that's still strong. 50% all year long, 100%
those 2 months.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's been very rewarding as well. And we've been to the Baltimore Buddy Walk a number of times, just passing out coffee and selling pounds of coffee. And then we were at the New York City Buddy Walk last year, and that was fun. That was great being in Central Park and hanging out with 3,000 people and probably half of them having Down syndrome. It was really fun. So the other kind of interesting thing, and so our daughter was born when we were in seminary. I think I said that in the last episode. And she was born on March 21.
No way.
Yeah.
What are the odds?
So it's like it took me until we started celebrating World Down Syndrome Day to realize, the connection there. So she's a 3/21 birthday.
Wow.
So it's kind of fun to celebrate her birthday on World Down Syndrome Day.
That's wild, man. What I love about what you do is, and we can split hairs and argue semantics. For me, any coffee you buy from you, it's creating ministry somewhere, somehow for someone.
Right.
And I think part of that is how we define ministry. In the last episode, we looked at a completely useless definition that just said whatever the preacher's job is ministry. When you hear that word, what does that mean to you? What does it mean? Is it only just preaching the gospel, or like what is ministry?
Yeah, I think we have to be careful. I think we have to be careful at some point, because we could get caught, as a friend of mine used to say, polishing the deck rails or rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic.
Yeah.
And so it has to be more than just bringing more worth to individuals. It has to be confronting them somehow with their eternal destinies, or it's just, it's good. And in the name of Christ, it will bring people to him. So you have to be a little bit careful that you're not just doing good for good's sake, as good as that is.
Sure.
When you're thinking of a ministry mindset. And so we get into faith conversations with people that are involved with Buddy Walks. And you'll find with today now, I was just reading, 67% of babies diagnosed with Down syndrome in the womb are aborted.
Wow.
So usually the people that don't abort their babies are evangelicals and Roman Catholics. And so you'll go to a Buddy Walk, and it's like a family reunion of evangelicals and Catholics. Most of them are, 90% of them are that, so,
Gotcha.
So there is a sort of just kind of a basic understanding of human dignity, and there's some countries, Iceland and Denmark, that are bragging that they abort all children that have Down syndrome.
They're bragging about it.
We are Down syndrome free, or we don't have, So it really is a travesty. But so there is that there too. And I think the other stat I haven't shared with you is that 78% of adults with a developmental disability in this country are unemployed.
78%.
Yeah.
Wow.
So it's just hard to get. And so that's one of our, special people. That's one of our, we have 3 people that work with us that have a developmental disability, and then a 4th person that volunteers with us that does. So, so that's another one of our emphases.
And that's at the core of the company, right? So if you were to expand, you would carry that out to the next branch.
Right, yeah. In fact, we do have an affiliate program. And so that's fallen on ears of people that have the same. So there's a organization. If you live in York, Pennsylvania, or York, South Carolina, don't buy our coffee. Buy York Roastery coffee, because they're an affiliate of ours. Max Abilities is the organization. It's kind of like an ARC or Change or Target that we have in Carroll County. And so we help them set up a roastery. Their roastery is larger than ours. They've got a coffee shop going, and they're employing people and training people with developmental disabilities to have jobs in the real world and so forth. So, and it's really cool because, it's kind of like, once again, I think there's a heart for people with developmental disabilities, especially when the Holy Spirit's living in you. So, we have the leadership there, they're Christ followers, and one of them was up just recently, and we had just a great time and talking about the Lord and so forth. And then there's another one in Media, Pennsylvania. Now, we could do another whole podcast on how hard it is to start a small business.
I got all day.
In the U.S., but there's another affiliate in Media, Pennsylvania that has to use our coffee roasted because they just have not been able to get the permits and the permissions to open up a roastery there. But they're all about, they just opened up a coffee shop. So they have the same mission we do on that side of things.
Gotcha.
And and we get, there's a mother and daughter in Poughkeepsie, New York. They've started, the daughter has Down syndrome, and they use our coffee and basically by Buddy Walk coffee, and that's what they serve in their shop. So there's a lot of that going on, and that's one of our main.
You're creating like just a giant community across like the Eastern Seaboard and reaching further on, which is incredible. I mean, this is a very specific people group who I, even myself, embarrassingly, I didn't know the chromosome. I don't know. People don't know.
Right.
And so I think it's a group that gets forgotten or overlooked. And I think so there's a ton of value into bringing it to the surface. So I'll amend my previous statement. All the coffee you buy from you guys is doing one of two things or both. It's either just adding value to lives, or it's bringing the gospel to people where you're not supposed to, or it's doing both. And all of that to me is a good thing. Like, it's literally sometimes supporting missionaries, and sometimes it's autism awareness and just different arm to that. Which man, I'm gonna drink coffee, so why not drink this coffee? I think that's how I feel.
It's kind of what we espouse. So yeah. And there are people, coffee. Coffee is, I think, for some reason, there's sort of don't think I did go to seminary, but there's something, I think God uses coffee in a way that is different. It's the second most traded commodity in the world.
Wow.
After oil, it's coffee. In the United States, there's only one place in the United States where we grow coffee. That's Hawaii.
Okay.
Because it's not
Kona blend.
Yeah.
I like Kona.
Yeah, you can get good coffee
this
in Guatemala.
Is better, but I like Kona blend.
But they grow coffee between the 25 degrees south, 25 degrees north.
Okay.
Above 3,000 feet in elevation is the best elevation to grow it. So 25 degrees north runs through Miami. So it's just you're not going to, if you did grow coffee in Santa Barbara, it's not going to be good. So it's that kind of, it's just not going to taste. Yeah.
So, and you said last episode that the stock price of coffee has
plummeted. Yeah.
So it's the second highest traded commodity, yet the price is just dropping, which is crazy.
It's really odd. So we're not part of that system. We're part of where we, like our Colombian, our Ethiopian, our Burundi coffee comes from straight from farmers or a middle person who's doing ministry there in another country. Burundi's a little bit, you can talk a little bit more about Burundi because it's not quite as locked down, bolted down as some of the other countries that we get coffee from. But so we pay higher than market prices for our coffee. So we get a Colombian coffee from a Colombian farmer that's $5 a pound green. So you can get 8 o'clock coffee for $4.50 a pound in the grocery store. Yep. So, we're already at a disadvantage if you're going to be, going with just the regular. And believe it or not, as much as you think, that there are some movement toward more of a specialty coffee culture in the U.S., we still nibble around. The biggest coffee companies still are Maxwell House, Folgers,
Really?
8 o'clock. So they are behemoth when it comes to.
Is it a generational thing? Because I know my dad's 78, and he would never touch this coffee or a Starbucks. Like he wants that. Like he jokes when I make coffee at his house that I made soup or oil or stew. Like he's always got all these terms for it.
Yeah, it could be. I haven't done a lot of. I find when we do promotions and we get the most clicks on Facebook, it's from women that are between 30 and 55.
Okay.
So I don't know what that says about what the coffee culture might be in general. And you think about it, you turn around and every place you look, there's a Starbucks.
Yeah.
But Starbucks only owns 10% of the business.
That's insane.
So you got to stop to think. There's a 12 minutes from here. There's a place where we get a lot of our coffee.
Okay.
A warehouse, and 93 million pounds of coffee is there, and 85% of it is earmarked for Starbucks.
Wow.
So in the port of Baltimore, every day comes 7 container loads, 7 times 42,000 pounds, just for Starbucks.
What?
So, and they only own, that's only 10%. That's just for this area, and that's only 10% of whatever that region.
Holy cow.
So it's huge. I don't think you'll ever, if you choose coffee as a business, it's your own self that'll put you out of business, not the market, So anyway, but so that's all coffee in general. But it's interesting to see more and more evangelicals moving into that and getting back to hospitality. More and more churches caring about the coffee that they serve. There's a small little church close to where we live. They have maybe 65, 70 people, but they've got this cafe now, and it's they call it a cafe. I mean, and they're using good coffee, and people are loving it, and more people are coming, and so I think the Holy Spirit is using the medium of coffee as a way of reaching people with the gospel, whether it's in church on Sunday morning or it's out in a jungle, being sourced by a guy who really is passionate about reaching those people for the gospel. It's the whole supply chain. It's interesting. There's an organization called CAM, Coffee is Mission, and when they do live events, there are certain members of the panel that are like off stage or not on camera.
Okay.
Because of the countries that they're serving in.
Yeah.
And so, and that it's been cool to see that organization grow.
That's awesome.
And see, more and more happening in that regard. Part of it is it's hard to get coffee to the States if you don't have some money behind you.
Yeah.
Or a lot of coffee on the other end. So,
right.
Yeah.
So we've talked about this a lot. You've done very traditional ministry, and now you're doing something completely different. That's a lot of things, a business, a ministry. It's just a lot of things. What does it feel like going from one to the other? What are the highlights of either or? Like, are you happier here? And that doesn't mean that you didn't enjoy the traditional ministry. Maybe it's just a different place.
I think the Lord used me, especially for our 22 years in Indianapolis. I grew up on a farm in New York State in the Finger Lakes region, and if you loaded a wagon of hay wrong, you could get to the end of the field and the wagon, the tractor and the hay baler, and you'd go around a corner, and you'd have to sink your hay hooks into a bunch of bales just to keep the whole thing on the wagon.
Yeah.
And I think that there were a number of times where I had to exercise, even the church we're in now, what I call hay hook leadership, where you just sink your hay hooks in and lean and hope the center holds,
Yeah.
And so the Lord gave me those opportunities to help keep churches going that had good ministries if you could just get the gunk out of the way.
Yeah.
And so that was a big part of it. I think just one of the things, if you look at Ephesians 4, the Apostle Paul gives a list of gifts there, spiritual gifts, and he says that they're there to equip the saints to do the work of ministry. So one of the things I did throughout ministry was about once every 6 months, look at what I was doing and decide, am I doing the ministry or am I equipping people to do the work? And to step back and make sure I was equipping people to do the work, not doing the work myself. So that was, and it was interesting, when I left full-time church ministry, the person who had the hardest problem with it was my wife. I think she enjoyed being a pastor's wife, being in the know, and so she admitted to me one time that it was hard for me to leave that. I think the cool thing about, and it's cool and it's a danger, is that you can do a lot of great ministry without having to have a board or a committee sign off on it when you're doing it on your own,
That's a good way
like
to
a
put
coffee.
It's cool and it's dangerous.
Yeah, because you can get ahead of yourself, and then you're in
Yeah.
trouble. Like, okay, how are we going to make this happen? You know, and we have already committed all these resources to this or that, and it's driving over here.
And there's no denominational backup.
They're
not going to come in and save the day.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, that's a good.
Yeah.
Do you find that is there a stigma? So I'm in full-time ministry right now, and I'm a touring musician. So I don't know. Is there a stigma of you're not doing ministry anymore because you're a coffee guy now? Is there any of that like coming from the church?
I have not seen any of that.
Okay, good.
And I think maybe a generation ago, like my mother's generation, there would have been.
Okay.
Like, what are you doing to do coffee? You know, you stop being a pastor to do coffee. What's going on here?
Yeah.
So
you're not following the Lord anymore.
you're not following.
What's
Yeah,
going
right.
on?
Yeah. So I think that was probably more of a generational thing. My mother prays every day for the coffee business.
That's awesome.
And she buys our coffee.
Yeah.
And we were with her this past weekend and took her a bunch of coffee. So, you know, it's and she's 95 years old. And I think she was a person outside of her time.
Okay.
She was, when our church was in trouble growing up, she goes, let's just dynamite the place and start over again.
I love that.
You know, it's like,
I love that.
this is like,
Oh, man.
so that's kind of, so she's been a good role model over these years.
More of a trailblazer. I love that, man.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So, but anyway, that, and I do think we just need to get more and more people involved in ministry. I remember my sister-in-law one time saying, I saved 3 babies today from dying. And I go, really? How'd you do that? She said, well, I'm a pediatrician, and I was in a adolescent clinic, and there were 3 girls that were pregnant, and I encouraged them to keep their babies. And so instead of carrying placards and marching and, if we're in people's lives,
absolutely,
then that's where ministry happens. It doesn't even really happen. I'm a Christian educator, education background. Maybe something happens differently in preaching, but if it's true to the core, you will forget 70, 90% of what you hear the pastor say 48 hours later.
Yep.
So
the relational aspect, I love that you hit on that. Like, and I'm sure you've heard this. It's not a new thought, but I remember in college hearing we were in a chapel service, and I don't even remember who was speaking, but he talked about the going out and handing out tracts and just witnessing to strangers on the streets. He didn't bash it. He didn't say it had no value. He's like, but you're diving into the deepest, most personal, non-public part of their existence with no run-up. You're just going, hey, are you going to heaven or hell?
Yeah.
He's like, his take was like, how dare you? Without like living alongside them, loving them over time. And it was very convicting to me because, young college Christian guy, I'm like just gung-ho. And I realized that I had been loving people up to a point where I realized, hey, they're never going to accept Jesus, so I think I'm done with them now, and I'm going to move on to the. And it just broke me because I'm like, no, Jesus had Judas the whole time.
Yeah,
he never walked away from him. He never gave up.
Well, I think there are two, so I'm a certified evangelism explosion. You may have to cut this. Trainer.
I'm very familiar. Yeah.
And so even we would go and visit people that came to our church for first time. And the national average of people who prayed the prayer even, came to Christ, who ended up being actively involved in the church, 9%.
Wow.
So we were able, with some things we were doing, to get it up to 35%. Then along comes Alpha. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but it's a dialogical approach. It's all about relationships and 100%.
If you hear an alarm, don't panic. Nothing's burning down.
We're going to... But
if you see us run off camera, then something really happened.
But 100% of those people stuck because we already had relationships built with them.
And that's what it is, a more relational approach.
Yeah. It's very, and no question is off, like even in the training for small group leaders, don't answer questions. Ask the rest of the group, even if they're all atheists. Well, what do you think about that question? Tell me what you guys think. And you build trust, you build relationships.
Is that where I'm rabbit trailing, but is that where the 70-30 rule comes from? Like when I've led small groups, I've always been told you want them to talk at least 70% of the time.
Yeah.
Is that like an alpha kind of
Well, more
process?
it could be. It could be. It's more like, you want them to get to, get to have trust and build relationships with them by by doing that. And there were some crazy questions that you could have said, no, that's wrong. Why are you even asked that question? And you go, no, well, that's a good question. What do the rest of you think? So
that's awesome. Yeah. I don't think, and I want to kind of clarify too, I'm not saying, I think it's a both and. It's not
right.
It's not only relational, and it's not only spur of the moment witnessing. I just think it has to be a spirit-led thing. There have been times in my life, they've been few and far between. There have been times where I really felt God saying, you got to go talk to that stranger. Mm-hmm. Terrifying, you know what I mean? But then they've been fruitful and things went well. But I think it's got to be spirit-led, or that's when it gets dangerous. If you're just like, you feel like you're this gunslinger with the gospel and you're just out there.
I remember one time flying back from Ukraine, we flew through Brussels, and Brussels is a hub for European Union and NATO. And so I had an elder traveling with me, and the head of communications for NATO sat next to him.
Oh, gosh.
And he shared the gospel with him. So with and the guy came to know the Lord.
Wow.
And they kept this relationship going, found a church for him in the D.C. area, and the guy grew in Christ and everything. So that happened just kind of like, hey, I don't know you, but you might want to hear this.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying that either.
I know you're not. I think we're pretty similar walks, which I really enjoyed talking to you, man. It's great. This is a weird note to wind down on, but as I've sat here with you, I have a lot of family in Indiana. You're super Indiana. Like, the more I talk to you, the way you talk, the way
really, I don't say cement though. They say cement out there. They don't say cement. They say cement. Yeah, I had some cement poured on my.
It's a good thing. Like, I have a lot of uncles, and you remind me of my whole family out there. It's a good. Cool. There's something sweet about maybe that whole part of the Midwest, the country, where. So here in the Northeast, you feel the same way I do, but you grew up in New York, so maybe not. I grew up in the South, and when I moved up here, I just thought everyone hates everyone. Yeah,
what I'd say is relationships that you build here are deeper because of that, probably.
100% true.
But I will say, this is not a spiritual statement, but I don't think Maryland has a state identity, whereas Indiana does. Yes. There's something about Indiana where you belong to something bigger than yourself, whereas in Maryland, you just belong to yourself and make sure the guy stays out of the way in front of you.
And similar with me growing up in Florida, it's a hodgepodge of everywhere. Right, Like, I was a rare native Floridian. Like, that's not normal.
Right.
Man, thank you so very much. This has been incredible. 2 episodes
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. We'll post all your information. Please follow along buy the coffee, see what you can do, see how you can be a part of it, get to a buddy walk, whatever that is.
Yeah.
Dave,
you can find them online.
Man.
Yep.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thanks, Josh.